The story starts with a faked suicide and this remarkable escape from a maximum security facility. And it sounds like a movie, right? Like, this could never happen in real life. But it's not. It's one of South Africa's most sensational, insane, disturbing crime stories. And at the center of this whole thing is a guy called Thabo Bester. He's a fraudster, he's a serial rapist, and he's a killer. And in 2012, he was sentenced to life behind bars. Now, if we were living in a functional society, that would be the end of his story. But of course, we know it wasn't. In 2023, Thabo Bester would again hit the headlines when it emerged that he had embarked on a truly incredible escape from the maximum security Mangaung Correctional Center in Bloemfontein. And more troublingly, it would take a year of him living in abject luxury and opulence before correctional services authorities finally admitted that he'd actually escaped. He was born on the 13th of June, 1986, and grew up in Eikenhof, a small holding outside of Johannesburg, where he was raised by his grandmother. Now, one of the families who knew him when he was growing up there said that he spoke very highly of his gran. And he was this incredibly mischievous child who they described as a quote-unquote smooth talker. But even at the beginnings of his life, there were indications that as a child, he was possibly involved in petty crime.
Ek het vir Thabo ontmoet in 98. Vakansies het hy na toe gekom, wanneer by sy ouma groot geword. En vir my gesê hoe lief is hy vir sy ouma, hoe gee sy ouma om vir hom. En ja, hy was 'n atleet, hy het landloop gedoen, hy het lang afstande gedoen. Hy het rugby gespeel. Hy was altyd netjies, skoon. Hy sal nie gesê Thabo kry swaar nie, want daar was nie swaar wat jy kon gesien het in hom nie. En hy was kom aflaai hier met mooi karre, open coupés, en as ek vra wie is dit? Nie as Ruben, is waar sy ouma werk vir hierdie mense. En so het ek mos nou geglo, en die oggend toe my seun opstaan, toe soek hy die foon, en toe sê my seun reguit, "It's you, Thabo, it's you." Jy het my foon gevat en as klaar gaan nie. Toe sê hy vir my, gaan sokker speel. In die middag kom hy terug met 'n trofee en hy sê vir my, "Tannie, ons het die liga gewen." Ek sê, "Liga gewen? Jy het dan nie geoefen die hele week, jy het nog net gaan speel vandag, wat?" En hy het gejok vir my.
A childhood friend who asked to remain anonymous told News 24 that money always seemed to disappear or reappear whenever Thabo was around.
Yeah, I remember that day very well because he said to us we must wait for him outside, and then he jumped the wall, we went in. I remember the dog still chased us, and we ran. We came back, waited for him, and then he came out. That's when we took a taxi. We went straight Rosebank.
Did he come with anything after he jumped the fence?
We didn't still ask him, but I remember moving from one point, from point A to point B. As we moved from point A, he didn't have money. We put money together for him for a taxi. And then from point B, he organized the money, so he had kind of cash on him, but then it seems like that was too little. And then we went to Rosebank. That's where I noticed, oh, now we got money now, because we came back eating having big boxes of pizza and so on.
He drops out of the Dani Tehran Primary School in grade 7 and starts fending for himself. And according to some of the people we spoke to, one of his first scams involves wearing this blazer with academic colors on it, which doesn't belong to him, to beg for donations.
Ons het gevind dat hy loop op die highway met die baadjie. met al die baaltjies op. En dit was nie sy baadjie gewees nie. Kyk, die kinders ek moes met hulle gesit soos in. Net so 'n bietjie, maar hulle het hulle eie ding gedoen. Ek het vir Thabo altyd uitgeval, dan kyk jy aan die in die sak en dan kry ons Tom Kelly se businesskaarte en Thomas se businesskaarte gehad op die ouderdom van 15 is nou toe hulle op hoërskool is.
Bester would have several run-ins with the law following his stint in juvenile detention.
Anton Taylor was a member of the UCT SRC when Thabo Bester approached him in 2009, claiming to be recruiting female students on campus for a reality show.
I remember right in the beginning, right when I met him, he showed me the documentation that he had. He had a document saying from SABC saying that the show had been commissioned. He had some documentation from BET, Black Entertainment Television, and he said that his father owned it. And, you know, in hindsight, of course, these are very bold, kind of outlandish claims, but he delivered it with such confidence and so, like, matter of fact that I didn't think to question him. You know, I was under the impression this was going to be a big TV show. And he said, look, we're looking, perhaps you can help me find students to be in it. But we noticed then he wasn't like that fussy. It almost just like he just wanted young female students for the show.
That scam soon unraveled, but not before Bester scored a free lunch off Taylor. He actually told him that he had been mugged at some point and later asked to borrow 300 Rand from him.
So my sister, who I think was, you know, a bit suspicious, and I think particularly with what's this guy, what's his plan for these women and how's he gonna do this, and maybe also because she was head of her res, perhaps having a protective kind of feeling towards the girls, she went in and put him into a Google search, and under the name Tom Kelly, he had been arrested on, I think, a Joburg campus, perhaps even the week before, for scamming aspiring models for a TV show that he was going to run based on Africa's Next Top Model. My sister told me this, and I remember being like, oh my word, and feeling very stupid, of course, like when you realize that you've been conned.
Thabo Bester became known as the Facebook Rapist after luring women online with the promise of modeling work.
Obviously in 2011, there were concerns of a serial rapist operating, meeting people online, luring the girls away, sometimes out the province, and then raping them. So I had been called in by the investigation team from KZN in Durban, and after he was arrested, they asked me to come down and do a thorough interview with him. Yes, I would say it's a bit unusual that you had a guy who had a long conning history of conning people, luring people, conning them out of their items, their phones and cell phones, etc. We don't see that level of conning perhaps in your day-to-day serial rapists, but I think that's perhaps because he was perhaps maybe a lot more intelligent and perhaps a bit more sophisticated and realized that.
My understanding is that he allegedly raped multiple women, but only 2 of them were prepared to actually lay charges against him. And I think what's quite horrifying is that the rapes were targeted at women that he had convinced into trusting him. In their victim impact statements, these women provide heartbreaking details of how their lives were absolutely destroyed.
I put so much faith and trust in this person, and after it turned the way it did, I'm not able to trust again. I still hear him say, I'm going to kill you, when my surroundings are quiet, and when I'm alone, I still feel the tape being tied around my mouth and around my wrists, and it brings me to tears every time.
I am no longer the same person that I used to be. There were times when I couldn't sleep at night because I feared for my life all the time. I couldn't bear the thought of him coming back to kill me because I was really not sure what would stop him from killing me. I'm so grateful that he did not kill me, even though he emotionally killed and destroyed me.
In his 2011 interview with Dr. Gerard Labuschagne, who was at that time working as a forensic psychologist for the police, Bester actually tried to portray himself as a victim.
I think all these incidents happened, yes, they happened 3 times differently. The rapes happened in a way that I did not know I was doing rape until I left the premises. Because if I knew I was doing rape, I could have covered myself up. So it only became known to me that I did rape when I left. So that's the way I feel about the 3 incidents.
So we see that here with, the rapes. It's kind of like I was going to rob her, I tied her up, and then I had this idea to rape her. And even later on in the interview, he says, and I only realized afterwards that it was rape. Okay, what about the second time? So you can't continue to use that type of excuse and, you've done it before, now you do it again. It's almost as if that your idea that it was a totally spontaneous incident the first time. Okay, the second time, it's hard to believe that there wasn't some forethought and idea that this is possibly going to be an outcome when I do this. I don't think he has a single iota of empathy for his victims, but not, oh my God, what have I actually done to another human being? I don't think that's really in his realm of his personality makeup to experience real, sincere empathy.
I'm sitting in a position where I feel I want this thing to pass as soon as possible. But I also, as a human being, want to be one day free. I think that's, despite the fact that I feel guilty, I feel that I'm wrong.
Sure.
But one thing I also feel like, I read the papers and I feel like they're talking about somebody else, not me. I look at these charges and I don't think it's me. I really don't think it's me.
Most serial rapists, because he's a serial rapist, he had 2 separate incidences of rape, and of course he then escalated in a 3rd incident to murder. And they'll approach people on the street. Very unsophisticated, but very effective. He was doing that, but just in a far more intelligent way, you could almost say, in trying to lure people, and then luring them away, and then, doing what he did to them. So he's really the same in certain ways as a lot of our serial rapists, but perhaps a bit more polished.
Thabo Bester also pleaded guilty to murdering Nomfundo Tyulu, a woman who he described as a loyal and supportive girlfriend, but he nevertheless stabbed her to death at a bed and breakfast in Cape Town in 2011.
Murder, I feel that it was just a pure, we fight over a knife, somebody gets stabbed in the process, and it was not, if I wanted to stab her, I could have killed her in Durban, I could have killed her the first night we got to Cape Town. So that was not my intentions at all. If I wanted to kill her, I could have got her into Mthatha, where there's much less people, and got her into a bush BNB there, killed her there. So my intentions was never to kill anyone. My intentions were, with her, was straightforward. I liked her, and things got twisted whenever they got twisted, and we had a fight. The knife got out of hand. She got stabbed. I got stabbed in the process. I tried to stop it, and there's no one in this world with 2 rape cases, and there's a knife involved, and I'm wanted by cops. If I went to the cops and said we had a fight, she got stabbed in the process, no one was going to believe me.
And he even describes the murder, I admit to bringing a knife to this argument, and she almost got accidentally stabbed, is how he describes it. Why'd you have the knife in the first place, etc. You knew you were going to do something untoward.
That I am responsible for her death. Because if I did not bring the knife, she would not be dead. If I did not ask her to come, she would not be dead. So that's why I pleaded guilty. And to the murder case, I can't plead guilty to murdering her because I did not intentionally want to kill her. But I can plead guilty on the fact of bringing a knife into her presence. That I can plead guilty. And how she got stabbed, I don't know. But I do, if I have to plead guilty in any regard there, I will plead guilty that I did bring the knife into the room and we had a fight and she got stabbed. To show that I don't feel that I was right. I'm responsible for my death, yes, more. That's 100% correct. I'm not responsible for killing her. I did not kill her. I did not kill her.
I think one of the most horrifying details that emerged in Bester's murder case was the fact that as Nomfundo lay dying from the stab wound that he had inflicted in her chest, he demanded her laptop password from her, and she refused. And then as she lies there dying, he tells the guest house staff not to disturb her because she's sleeping.
I thought of that. That was the first thing to do, obviously, wake up the owners of the B&B and let them come and then call the cops and get an ambulance there. But I thought if I do that, it's like me saying, okay, I did the murder. You understand?
And the autopsy result suggests very strongly that had she gotten help, she could have been saved.
So what's really unique about at least his original 2 rapes that he was convicted for and the murder, this was not a short interaction. Here we have someone who spent some days, if not hours, and driving from Gauteng down to Durban with someone in their car. All that time is that person's, memorizing your face, whether they realize it or not. It's more time with that person, more to remember, more things that you can tell the police. And that really is very interesting because that's very risky. Unless you, in some reason, think your victim's not going to go to the police, there's a lot you can tell the police about this person. So one does have to wonder, is it also about that power and control? I can con someone so successfully for so long. Is it because I don't care about the consequences, which again might talk back to his personality makeup? Or was it just with the lure of being able to con someone was so satisfying, the rape or the murder was maybe just the cherry on the top?
I personally think that Thabo Bester displays a lot of the narcissistic personality traits that typically define a sociopath. And you see that in the crimes that he commits, you see that in the way that he escapes from prison, and you see that in the scams that he perpetuated in order to fund that escape.
And when he began his relationship with Nandipha Magudumana, he found someone who magnified that narcissism and arguably reflected it back at him.
When we first heard her name, we almost immediately dismissed it. We Googled her and we was like, no, Dr. Nandipha has been seen as a role model, as someone who has made it. And she had what seemed to be a successful aesthetics practice or cosmetics surgeon. She was a Mail and Guardian top 200 young people. She was on news and on podcasts and TV interviews. She had over 200,000 followers on Instagram. You wonder why on earth would someone like this get involved with someone like Thabo Bester?
So everything that we know about how Thabo Bester met Dr. Nandipha comes from court documents that she filed. And she said that they had met at university, which we know is unlikely because he never went to university. And it was there that they formed a friendship. She also said that she, for reasons that we don't quite understand, had started visiting him in prison, and that their relationship began shortly after those visits commenced.
When he operated as the Facebook rapist, Thabo pretended to work for MTV. In his prison records, he described himself as running an events company. And with Nandipha at his side, he managed to convince people that he was a member of South Africa's wealthy Motsepe family and a media magnate.
Tonight, we're at the Hilton in Sandton celebrating the launch of the 21st Century Group.
He obviously had access to a lot of money. These big fancy events show that. And he'd convinced pretty high, like top journalists, top media executives that he was the real deal.
A number of people, celebrities, business people, politicians, even the spokesperson for the Jacob Zuma Foundation, sang happy birthday to this convicted rapist murderer who was in jail at the time.
Happy birthday, dear Tom. Happy birthday.
They believed that they were singing happy birthday to this mega wealthy tycoon who was in America at the time.
We hope you're not crying.
That deception was remarkably effective.
But Bester's scams went far beyond media events. He even pretended to be the head of a multinational media empire and was so convincing that local talent agencies sent TV presenters and personalities to go and audition for his fake 21st century media company. I spoke to Stacey Holland, a TV presenter, about her experience of that audition process.
They were running auditions for news anchors, presenters, and actors, which I found strange because I couldn't understand what type of a news channel or a channel needed those three types of positions to be filled together. I started researching this 21st century group and I couldn't find anything that was substantial online. And so I had gone in with all these questions that I wanted answered, but the job description itself wasn't quite clear at that point of the process.
Did you know a lot of people within the industry who were part of the auditions that you were participating in?
So at one point in time, we did get an email with a bunch of names. A lot of them I recognize. Many of them are actually, reputable journalists or presenters in the industry.
It was always on the phone, like, okay, I need you guys to do this. I need you guys to get that. I need you guys to go to auditions. There's all of that. And then his PA, for instance, we would meet his PA at the sentence house for the auditions or stuff like that.
Wow. Do you know?
We wouldn't really see him personally.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think another important point that needs to be mentioned, Karen, is that someone's degree of desperation in getting a job or in landing that big break, that big opportunity, is going to influence how they would have seen or whether they would have seen these red flags and how they would have responded to it.
After participating in two rather strange meetings with 21st century media, Stacey Holland says she never heard from the company again. But messages seen by News 24 reveal that one of the actresses who'd taken part in these auditions was told that she'd got the job and received a 40,000 Rand payment for a movie that didn't exist.
News 24 also uncovered that Bester, who was supposedly in a relationship with Magudumana, was actively pursuing other women under his fake Tomotsepe persona. We spoke to one of these women who said she'd actually confronted Bester about romantically scamming her.
I feel stupid in that. I felt stupid at the time. I went through the shame with myself and I moved on with my life.
Were you in love with him?
Maybe in a fantastical way. I don't think so, because I started realizing that something was off. So was I maybe flipped up with, the possibility of this, billionaires who live in New York and have a condo in Manhattan? Maybe that appeals to some of my ego. Do you know what I mean? Going and visiting this person and seeing him in jail had to put to bed the fantasies that he placed in my head about who he was and who he was projecting himself to be, which was completely far removed from the truth.
Mareka Nchani, also known as Dr. Pashi, gave an exclusive interview to the SABC. In it, she said that Dr. Nandipa had told her that Bester, who she knew as TK Nkwana, could organize an elaborate event with Oprah Winfrey as a guest. This event was never, ever going to happen, and she sunk millions into it.
That alleged scam played out during the period that Thabo Bester escaped from the Mangaung Correctional Center. And Dr. Pashi believes, and I think for very good reason, that scam was used to fund the escape as well as the luxurious life that Bester and Dr. Nandipa lived in the months and weeks after his escape from prison. We know that Thabo Bester escaped from prison on the 3rd of May 2022. He had the support or parent support of Dr. Nandipa, and he had Dr. Pashi's money. But he needed one more thing to make his escape plot work, and that was a body. he needed a body so that he could fake his own suicide by setting that body alight in his cell and therefore ensure that prison authorities would not know that he had actually escaped. Katlego Polo's dream of being a present father to his children was destroyed in the days before Thabo Bester escaped from prison in May 2022. So while we don't have a lot of details, what we do know is that he died from a blunt force trauma injury to the head. And his body was then used to help fake Bester's suicide. Tragically, his family only found out a year after the day we believe he died what had actually happened to him.
The fact that we're both still living with our parents and then we lose contact because she had to move because at that time we were staying in Botswana and she had to move to Bloemfontein. And remember at that time there were no cell phones, no social media to us, so we lost contact and that really affected me.
Katlego's father, Batom Polo, who'd actually only ever met his own father when he was 18 years old, started traveling to Bloemfontein to look for his son in about 2008, that he finally met his then 18-year-old son, Katlego.
That was the day of my life. I was so happy.
Because I always asked him, are you sure you have forgiven your father? Are you sure you don't have questions for him? Are you sure? And then he would always be like, what's the use of living in the past? And he will just be so happy about it. And I was always afraid of him just maybe lashing out one day and being like, yeah, where have you been? And it really never happened.
I thank God that I met Katlego while he was still alive, while he was a teenager, because he was also 18 years when I found him.
Like his grandfather and his father before him, Katlego Polo became a father at a very young age. But even as a 19-year-old first-time dad, he was determined to be present in the lives of his children.
Too much. But una aya go umukulu. Esekhalo tlaba atseya umukulu alozo omunye ebana kamuka.
Every time he would just send me a picture of him holding a child and I would say good boy, because that's what I wanted. I wanted him, to be better than me.
Ke nne ke tswelele inje wa bona. Ke butsise Katlego. A little le bone Katlego. A ke motho le Facebook nne. Ke butsise di friend te. A little le bone Katlego. No one. Ke butsise le bone ba bo mama bana. A little le bone Katlego le mofeleditse le. A hona ka le feleditse Katlego. Thandiwa a re sale atla monna. O ne wa bobedi wa msimanyana. A re sale atla monna. A tlo bona ngwana ele nyana. But it was yone March e. So then since I'm gonna lena ka March ko kopano ke tsia photo ke lo bula case ya missing.
We only panicked when the police called Monica for DNA tests. We panicked, but we kept faith, because she called me to say, I've just received a call from the police. They want to conduct a DNA test. For me, I thought maybe it's another body that maybe was discovered because we reported a missing person. Because maybe we are the only ones who open a missing person report, they just want to see if there is a link between us and that body.
Then ba khono ba botse mama ke ne umukolo for the DNA test tse di positive. La ka bitsa di family. Kopela letle le tlo kwa hiralang ke se sharp. Then the family tsatla Ke re time ge le police le kreile di DNA test tseo ke tsa ka di matcha motho e leng for Bester rona mo fisa ko tronkong hana escape ke ngwana ka di 24 raya ko di office tsa mapolisa a tshwereng case ne re lo kopa go bona stop ba re ka skone ba busy ka son di 26 ba re retle di 26 ga ba re retle tsa April retle ba kana ga ko government moshara ga lo bona stop rai ga re tsena ko government moshara e krele ele katle go bat it's a skeleton.
I mean, it's really like two very, very painful things, like straight after. First of all, you've lost your son. And second of all, his body has been brutalized in this way.
And what came to my spirit, was that my son never collapsed anyway. What came to my spirit was that my son was, roped, when a friend saying, let's go to this place, not knowing that he has his motives. And then when we get there, you find people waiting for you. They kidnap you, keep you somewhere for a while, kill you and keep you for a while, and then toy with your body. That's what came to my spirit. And that what it is in my spirit. I even told the investigator to say, for me, I know sometimes people would say he's talking out of pain. I said, for me, my son never collapsed. If it happens that my son's body was found where they say it was found, it means his body was dumped there.
Ke right total cause ke ipotsa bona na ba ira dilo tseo ha bana na motho na morel o rena na dipa hana ngwana le Bester bana gore ba tlo bola ngwana ke ka tenele tsotsi gore eng so ke kira ngwana ke setse e le skeleton a le bjalo so I ke right total so nna se ke se kopela justice ene ke kopela le nnete gore ngwana ke o tsene yang ko G4S and o tsene yang go national ke butse case.
I do not understand it. And I always stray away from those thoughts because the biggest one I have is, did they find him somewhere injured and he became the target? Or did they specifically target him for this thing? And I don't understand it. I don't understand how their minds work. How are you okay? How do you go on with your life? How are you even able to eat after doing something like that? How are you still happy? How are you able to smile? How do you look at your daughters, Nandipa, when you know you have taken somebody else's son?
Jane Mpolo is, however, doubtful that Dr. Nandipa or Thabo Bester will ever tell the truth about what happened to Katlego. And she says that even if they do, no one's going to believe them. When I asked her what she wanted to say to Katlego, this is what she said.
I will tell him that I love him and that I'm grateful for the impact that he made on my life, as short as, we got in touch with each other, and that he should just continue to keep visiting me, because he does. He does. And he should look out for his kids in a way that people in the physical realm cannot. he should know that all his family, his brothers adore him as well. And we're just happy that we know where he's buried. So just really thank him for fighting so much, because I believe he's the one who fought for himself to reveal all the details, to even start this conversation. I don't think if he was a type of spirit that was just like, okay, this happened to me, it's okay, I can go to heaven or hell now, that we would have been where we are now. But he wanted answers for his family. And now we're here. And I hope, not to say he's done fighting, but I hope he's able to rest, because he deserves it. He deserves to rest. And trust that the Lord and the ancestors will take care of this.
Thabo Bester's escape only is exposed because of Ground Up's relentless questioning about the authorities' claim that he had died in this bizarre suicide by fire scenario. And by mid-March in 2023, it becomes apparent that he actually has escaped. And that suspicion is then solidified when Ground Up publishes a picture of him and Dr. Nandipa in the Sandton Woolworths. And that's when things really start to unravel.
Hello and welcome to News 24 on Air, our audio service. I'm Mihlali Thabo. After a 2-week chase, a convicted murderer and serial rapist, Thabo Bester, and his accomplice, Dr. Nandipa Magudumana, were arrested in Tanzania and are now back in the country.
So in mid-March, Dr. Nandipa drops off her kids at school. And it's around about that time that, we suspect that she and Thabo Bester went on the run because she's not seen again. And what ensues is this incredible story, the full details of which we actually don't know, where the two of them use fake passports to unlawfully cross multiple borders and are eventually caught in Tanzania with the possible plan of going to Kenya or Nigeria.
Minister of Police and the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services can confirm that escapee, Mr. Thabo Bester, or well known as Thabo Bester, with his accomplice, also known as Dr. Nandipa Magudumana, with the Mozambican national, have been arrested in Tanzania late last night.
How was he arrested? Was he walking? Was he on foot? No, he was on a black SUV.
An official delegation from the South Africa comprises of senior officials from the police, justice and correctional services will depart for Tanzania tomorrow.
So while the authorities were extremely reluctant to admit that Thabo Bester had in fact escaped from prison, when they managed to track him and Nandipa down in Tanzania, they have these, big press conferences basically announcing that they've got them and they're going to be bringing them back to South Africa.
We were told that there were 10 Ks when they were found away from Kenya to move from Tanzania to Kenya. So it does look like they were heading for the next country as they were found in that particular area.
What was his real name within our system? His name within our system was Thabo Bester. That is what we have. But as you are aware, it has since emerged that there are different names and connotations which Home Affairs is dealing with, and they are better placed to help.
So there was this major furore over Thabo Bester's identity because he didn't have an ID document, and it is confirmed that he has now been identified because of his fingerprints.
Thabo never registered with any Home Affairs at any stage.
So the only place where you could find him, as police said, was in correctional services when he was an inmate. That's where you'll find this fingerprint and photo, but also in the South African Police Services crime data. In terms of registration in the civil manner, the only other place where you could find Thabo Bester is Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. The records that are now 37 years old.
What we know is that at the present moment they're having several passports each, and not a single one that has been stamped as they were crossing.
So when G4S is hauled before Parliament to answer the obvious questions about how this could have happened, it's not a pretty picture. They don't have any real answers, and their only seeming response to being asked to be accountable for what has occurred is to pass the buck.
Yes, there are officials implicated from G4S in terms of the investigative report that we have. We are also angry because we also believe this is the highest level of dereliction of duty by G4S in that facility.
How can you honestly sit there this morning and tell not me, not the people in this room, you're talking, I hope you understand, to the South African public who have an absolute direct interest in this matter. They have an interest in not having serial rapists and murderers running around the streets. And your job was to make sure that didn't happen. A job you failed at miserably. Do you honestly want to tell people that you think, or that you're satisfied, or that the ambit of your investigation was satisfied after 3 people were suspended and fired?
That's what we are able to say at this stage, Honourable Member.
Good Lord.
Obviously, there's a court process that's playing out and a lot more detail will emerge. But from what the state has presented thus far, it is the state's case that a number of key prison personnel, CCTV operators, prison wardens, etc., were offered quite lavish amounts of money. I think it was about 2.5 million rand in order to aid and abet the escape. But on the evidence that the state has presented thus far, they received a maximum of, I think, 40,000 rand in some instances and as low as just over 1,000 rand in another. And the tragedy, of course, is that while this case keeps grabbing headlines, there were real victims involved and real lives destroyed as a result of what happened.
We shouldn't forget that Thabo Bester is a very dangerous man. So despite how sensational his escape has been and how elaborate his scams have been, we shouldn't forget who he is, which is a murderer and rapist, and very dangerous.
One of the things that really jars for me is that the victims of Thabo Bester and Dr. Nandipa's alleged scams and their activities and the desecration, at very least, of Katlego Borengampolo's body have actually received some of the worst backlash on social media. They've been targeted, while people post glowing praise to Dr. Nandipa about how beautiful she is. She goes into the dark. I mean, initially when she had the mask on with no makeup, there was a sense of contrition, but that's gone. She's blowing kisses to her family members. People are wearing designer clothes in court. And there's this personality cult that's formed around the two of them, which I think says something about our society and what we value.
Throughout the story, one of the biggest things that have somewhat bothered me is just how Thabo Bester has been hailed as this hero for somehow being able to slip under the radar and escape police custody, and how he was able to do all of this after he escaped. He's not some sort of a hero, and this isn't a movie, although it may seem like it is. These are real people, they are real victims, and that needs to be remembered.
Speaking to the mother and the grandmother, you can sense the sense of betrayal that they feel at the hands of the police, but also how disturbed they are by the idea that their grandson, who did not have any priors with the police, according to them, had ended up had met his end in a prison cell where, in their words, murderers and rapists are kept.
We all aware that the way Katleho died, it wasn't supposed to be like that. You know, there is a hand in Katleho's death. However, what we as the family is expecting is the truth. Somebody must just tell us the truth. Somebody must just come up with answers for all the questions that we have. For us, that will be justice.
So at this point, all the accused, I think bar Thabo Bester is obviously a convicted criminal, and Dr. Magodamana have received bail. And I think that a number of those accused people are going to attempt to turn state witness, particularly given the low level of payment that they received and the implication of serving years in jail for a crime that, clearly they may not have played such a major part in. So we are going to see those negotiations happening, and I do expect that the state will agree to turn some of those people into state witnesses. Charges against 3 of the accused have now been dropped. But I think the biggest question for everyone is really, what is Dr. Nandipa's defense to all of this going to be? She claimed bodies. She was integrally involved. She was a massive part of this escape plot. And, we've seen these voice messages emerging which suggest that maybe he was an abusive personality, and maybe that's going to be a line of defense. But then simultaneously, we see these visuals of her and Thabo Bester in court together, seemingly very much in love. So there's a massive contradiction there. And given that she's already been found to have lied under oath, when she does give her version of events, I don't know that anyone's going to believe her. I think what is pivotal for the state is to really investigate the alleged scams that funded this escape. And I think that investigation is going to expose a truly ugly side of Johannesburg society, where your wealth seems to be, or the appearance of wealth seems to be all that, was required to convince people that you were legitimate and that you should be welcomed with open arms into the best upper levels of Joburg high society, despite the fact that you were in fact a rapist, a murderer, and a fraudster.